Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money. Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
So, warm welcome to you from the studio of Leadership TV. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's edition of Money Radio. We're discussing a topic that says focusing on in-country utilization of crude as energy transition drive intensifies. In the studio to discuss that with me is Mr. Anthony Uko. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. With the level of industrialization in Nigeria at the moment, many stakeholders are saying, okay, it is time to focus on internal utilization of crude oil, which Nigeria is naturally richly endowed with. Now, crude oil is not being properly utilized in the country, as you would agree. And even as there is a boom right now, global boom, because the price of crude oil right now is hovering somewhere between 95 and 105. And that has been steady for the past, say, 6 months. So many countries are actually enjoying whatever development is causing the high price of crude oil, except Nigeria. How can Nigeria focus on utilizing that crude oil to make the economy grow better than it is doing now? You may look at it from the background of the fact that right now, Nigeria is producing like half of her OPEC quota. That is bad. Why? And how can Nigeria focus on internal utilization of crude oil? Over to you.
Yes, if we want to look at in-country utilization of crude as it is, you find that Nigeria is still a largely exporting country. While this is necessary in because of the need to earn foreign exchange, which the country also needs because of its import dependence when it comes to consumable goods. It's also necessary that Nigeria begins to focus more on utilizing these resources for industrialization within the country. Recently, we see that the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria has cried out over the low level of industrialization in the country. The president, when he was speaking recently, took a look at the states in Nigeria and their level of contribution to the GDP in terms of productivity. And the conclusion was that for many states, their contribution is very low. Many states depend mostly on coming to the center, to the capital, for allocation that is shared. And with the myriads of problems that Nigeria has been having in terms of earning effectively from the export of crude oil, it's also been an issue because what to be shared at the center has been dwindling, and so the need, while stakeholders are saying there is need for Nigeria to focus on ensuring that this crude is utilized to build Nigeria's economy, to further industrialize. Much more so now that crude is still, it can still be utilized, because as the drive for energy transition intensifies, it will get to a point where Nigeria can no longer effectively utilize crude.
This is like Nigeria is really fortunate right now, or should be fortunate.
Yeah.
Some people will say lucky. Before now, pundits have been saying, look, the price of crude oil would never get back to 100 naira or $100 per barrel,
Dollars.
because there was really that transition.
Yeah.
You had electric cars, you had wind turbines, you have solar power,
Mm.
and Europe especially was actually going deep into that. China was going deep into that. Um, a number of African countries have been also going green, notably Rwanda, the US also. Those major industrialized countries have been going green, although the those countries have been exposed to the fact that right now you can't completely avoid using fossil fuel,
Yeah.
because the world has not developed to that level where you will see you are completely jettisoning fossil fuel. But in any case, even if fossil fuel is jettisoned right now, Nigeria still has something to fall back on, and that is natural gas, which Nigeria has more than crude oil. What is being done in that area also?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's in recent years that Nigeria has actually like woken up to the realization that it's more a gas nation than a crude oil nation. And as it is, we would say that the infrastructure for gas in the country, it's still more or less at its infancy. Apart from the Nigerian LNG, there has been much in there has seen much investment into gas processing and all that, both for exports and for in-country utilization. Most of the oil companies, the international oil companies, before now, they have been flaring gas
Yeah.
because of the huge resources that is required to put in place the sound infrastructure needed to get in this gas and for utilization. They have just been wasting it. It's they've not even gone out mainly for gas. It's been the associated gas that comes with exploring crude, and then they've been burning it off and all that. And because Nigeria also has not been very serious when it comes to imposing penalties on this countries, on this IOCs for flaring gas. So he's been playing lip service on imposing these penalties, and they've been jumping the gun. They see that it's cheaper for them to pay off these penalties rather than sunk in the financial requirements that will be needed to actively process gas. And
Or trap the
oh
associated
yes, trap
gas.
the associated gas so that it can be processed for
Industrial use.
industrial use and domestic use at that. So Nigeria has been the worst for it, as we're seeing, because a country that is so rich in gas, even though there's a global energy crisis,
Yes, and there is that huge demand for
yes,
it.
there is that huge demand for it, and this is a place where Nigeria could have been able to play freely. We've been having issues with oil theft. it's actually not that easy to steal gas. So, Nigeria would have still had comparative
When you say it's not
advantage.
that easy to steal gas, are you talking about the danger?
Well, I'm looking at the danger, or maybe because Nigeria has really not developed enough gas. Maybe that's why we would say it's because it's very possible that the criminals who have invested so much money to be able to steal crude can also invest to ensure they tap gas.
So there was a time around the onset of this Russia-Ukraine war. Was it around March? Because the war started on February 24th. Somewhere around March or sometime around March, April, there was a delegation from Europe that came to visit Nigeria. Albeit, I don't know, I would say surreptitiously. But they came to visit Nigeria, and when they came, they met with the, the NNPC and the Ministry of
Petroleum resources.
Petroleum Resources. One would guess that it was because of the demand they were shifting from Russia, because Russia is supposed to be reeling from their sanctions. So one would guess that it is because they were shifting their demand from Russia, or their demand from Russian gas Russian gas to someplace else, and Nigeria is rich in gas. So uh, you are an insider. I would call you because there are many things we don't know that you know. Tell us what is going on there. Has there been any further development in that area? What was the purpose of that visit, first of all?
Of course, the purpose there, has been to cultivate this relationship with Nigeria, whereby Nigeria is able to supply more gas than it's currently doing. And of course, that has followed up with that visit. That
Mhm.
wasn't the initial visit, but it was a follow-up to earlier discussions. And this also have intensified.
But it was not. It wasn't. It was a planned. How do I call it? Can we say it was a necessitated visit?
Yes, it was necessitated at that point because of, like you pointed out, the Russian invasion
Yes.
of Ukraine.
Mhm.
And then, there have been other discussions from there. We've seen the uh, Nigerian Morocco gas pipeline that it's been fast tracked, which will also see gas being transported to Europe. There's been a lot of in ways following these discussions because they've seen the need for Nigeria to ramp up its gas production. And I tell you that a lot came up from that, and it's beginning to show the like we the Nigerian Morocco gas pipeline, the transatlantic gas pipeline, all those things have been brought back to the front burner to ensure that they are fast tracked so that Nigeria begins to supply more gas to Europe, to other African countries, and then, of course, ultimately to Europe.
Let's not forget about what we are discussing. We are talking about
Yes,
utilizing
yes.
crude, internal utilization of crude. But just to divert a little bit, recently, was it this week or late last week, there was this MOU that was signed. It wasn't the first MOU, but MOU is MOU between Russia. Sorry, did I say Russia? Morocco, um, Nigeria, and another party on this construction of a gas pipeline straight through to Morocco.
Yeah.
Um, what is going on in that space also?
And yeah, like I pointed out, I made mention earlier, that MOU was for the funding of um, the pipeline from from the Moroccan end, but it's actually from Nigeria. The it's a pipeline that runs from Nigeria through to Morocco, going across many African countries. It will supply gas along the way, all the way, and to Morocco, and then to Europe. So that agreement was basically for the Moroccan end of the transaction. Nigeria's zone is also on the table, which it's also canvassing for investors to be able to do something about it. So I like I said, all this, the need for Nigeria to ramp up its gas production has become very has been brought to the front burner as a result of this Russian-Ukraine crisis. And before now, many people did not know the. A lot of people felt that talking about energy transition was like completely jettisoning, you know, fossil and all its attendant components. But with this crisis, Europe particularly has redefined its own as definition of the energy transition into that has included gas as being a clean energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that,
Actually, the gas burns
yes,
well.
yes. So with that, Nigeria is actually going to see a lot more investment in that sphere, because the investors, funding companies have been pulling out their resources from funding.
Now, hold on a moment, and said we have a number of IOCs, international oil companies in Nigeria, with the exception of NLNG. I don't see any gas companies. Why don't we have international gas companies? People coming into, I mean, companies coming in to invest, knowing that Nigeria is so rich. What is Nigeria's reserve of gas again? 2 point something trillion
209
cubic
trillion
trillion.
cubic feet of gas.
I don't. I can't describe it to a layman. I too don't understand what that cubic feet means. But
209 trillion
trillion
is actually huge. So anyhow,
is huge. Now, even if it's one drop like this, that is a cubic foot. When you talk about trillion,
2 trillion.
yes, that is huge. Now,
Mhm.
why don't we have international gas companies coming in to invest? Is it as a result of some we have the Petroleum Industry Act right now, and although its implementation is actually should we say in progress? Well, it's at a stage right now,
It's actually in progress. It's actually in progress because
but
the uh, regulatory authorities have been formulating rules.
now
That
why aren't international gas companies coming in? Is it because of some fear of what is happening in the oil industry, or you have oil theft and all of that? Or is it some is it an issue of policy or whatever? What is holding
Well, I
this?
wouldn't, I wouldn't, I'm not holding forth for them, so I wouldn't know why we've not had international companies coming in to explore and process gas. I know the oil companies, they've been here. Oil was the in thing, and that was their focus. And you know, they just focused on oil. But I think recently, in one of my interactions with Pengasan, that's the workers' union in
Yes,
the oil
and gas.
and gas industry,
Yeah.
the president actually made mention of a particular company that is now sending crude back into the ground while focusing on exploring gas.
I don't understand that. Please, you have to explain further.
So yeah, what they meant was that the company is currently focusing on gas right now. So what it does is that when crude comes out, it gets the associated gas and crude and returns back the crude to the ground.
Crude oil is still in demand. Why
It's
not?
still in demand. Apparently, they don't want to really invest in what they would not see anything come out of at the end of the day. With the level of crude oil, that company feels that right now, investing your time and energy in exploring crude will not yield the commensurate returns that it should. So they are trying to shift their focus from crude to gas. And being that that is the license that they have right now, so they cannot completely. They are using their same oil well to tap out the associated gas. So even if they're still getting out the gas, but they will not get it at the level, they will not get the kind of quantity that they would get if they were actually, they actually have a license for gas in gas designated wells and all that. So, but for them, I think for them, they feel that's better at
Yeah,
this
but
time.
bring us up to speed with something. There's something I don't understand quite well. Um, Gas. Is it not when you go to mine gas? Is it not a separate resource from where oil is mined?
Yes, there are some fields that are designated gas wells.
Okay,
Those are what you have there is gas, no crude.
okay,
But in many of these oil wells, there's gas that comes out with
the
crude,
crude.
and
Okay,
that is what is called the associated
I
gas.
got you.
In the process of mining crude, gas comes along with it, and that is why the companies before in fact up till now they've been flaring the gas, because their target is the crude, not the gas. And so they let the gas waste, they flare it they burn it into the atmosphere, further compounding the
Environmental.
environmental issues and
Yes.
all that. So from all indications, this company now, one, it's focusing more, apparently because of where it's coming from, the change in its funding priorities for fossil, because many of the international companies are actually um, reorganizing, changing their funding patterns,
Yes.
and that is affecting a lot of the companies that operations that are under them. So this company now seems to be focusing more
On
on
gas.
gas.
Now, just before we wrap up this show, I want to ask you a question because we are coming back to what we have been discussing from the very moment. Right? It's focusing on in-country utilization of crude as energy transition drive intensifies. Does Nigeria have the capacity to focus on crude internal utilization of crude to make some, please, to augment her income,
As
for
we
to augment her income and become richer or become, let's say, able to meet her financial obligations? Can such a thing happen? And does Nigeria have
Of course,
the
it can.
the capacity?
Nigeria has, when it comes to demand for this product, Nigeria has a wide, the demand is there. But what we're looking at right
We're
now
talking
is
about
the
211 million.
million
Nigerians.
Nigerians.
Okay.
And then, but when we want to look at capacity to utilize this product in country, we find that Nigeria is seriously lacking. Nigeria currently has four state-owned refineries with capacity of about 400,000 barrels of crude, and as we speak, and for many years before now, Nigeria has not been those refineries have not been refining any products for consumption.
How many years are we
Des-
talking about here? We talking. When was the oil discovered in Olubiri? Is it not 1956?
Yeah, 1950s. But these refineries were built before
In the
then.
70s?
Yes, and they were producing, at least they were refining at some point. I can't even, I
I
really
don't think.
cannot wrap my head around when the refineries stopped production, but as in stopped refining. But for as long as I can remember, those refineries seem to uh, have become a dark hole.
Yes, because I saw
money is sunken and
Mhm.
nothing comes out.
because I saw an image not long ago on the social media, and the what was written down there to describe that image was sometime around 1974. And from the cars you see in that image, you know that it was somewhere around the 70s, and there was a long queue, people trying to get fuel. Right. So even at that time, there has been this issue of fuel scarcity intermittently anyway, but there has been this issue of fuel scarcity. And if we had fuel scarcity at that time, and we are still having the same problem like this, that goes to show that, look, government has not been focused on solving this issue of
It hasn't. It
fuel
hasn't.
scarcity, NEPA.
And
Power.
these issues also boils down to, you um, utilizing this resources in country. Nigeria needs gas to produce electricity.
Yes.
The bulk of the electricity that is currently being 80%
80%.
of it comes from gas powered turbines.
And the gas is right
And
under
the
there.
gas, yes, and it's right under there. So Nigeria does not even need to have uh, shortage of electricity.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to have shortage of petrol
And even cooking gas.
and cooking gas. So it just, when you look at all this, and it's like being inside the river and there's soap in one side.
Yes. Bob Marley said it in a way that would sound derogatory right now for me to mention, but one of his songs is that in the abundance of water, da is thirsty. You know, so let's not be that. It's my hope that the authorities will get to realize that, look, even countries that are not endowed with crude oil, gas, are actually having
Yes,
those
they are having
products
refineries.
they're having refineries and refining for Nigeria.
And buying crude.
From Nigeria and
Buy
sending.
crude,
I'm
refine,
talking
and
about
then
African
send.
countries.
Africa, of course, African countries
That is-
refining the crude and then sending it back.
at
Nigeria
a cost.
at huge cost.
Yes.
So Nigeria can send out refined products as a means of, Nigeria currently exports crude to get foreign exchange. But it will even be better to export finished product and still get the
foreign
same
exchange.
foreign exchange, while Nigerians are having them in abundance to use and cheaper too, I would say.
Quite sad. That's how we want to wrap it up today. So thank you for being here again on this Thursday. I want to say thank you to our producers, but our biggest thanks go to you who follow us loyally on this program. We'll be back tomorrow with a fresh edition of Money Radio, and that will be the transportation segment of the program. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.